Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to a very special episode of the Disney Bombvoyage podcast. Welcome to a special episode of the Bombvoyage podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Ken Johnson, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host, Travis. How are you doing today? And that's how he's doing today. So, we are in the process of restarting doing the Bombvoyage podcast more frequently. And although we have a few normal episodes lined up that'll be coming out very soon, we decided that after seeing how big of an impact it seems like the new 2017 remake of the 1991 classic Beauty and the Beast seems to be making, we might as well go to the theater and get our 2 cents about the thing. So we decided that we were going to go see the film and give our thoughts about it on our Disney podcast. So
yeah, it's kind of what we do.
Exactly.
Kind of our thing.
So movie's been outrageously popular over the weekend. Reviews have been all over the place, depending on who you talk to. And I think part of it depends on your relationship with original Beauty and the Beast to some extent, either for better or for worse. Out of context, I've never been the biggest fan of Beauty and the Beast as a movie in particular. I never had really anything like large against it. Just wasn't really the one that really clicked for me. For a couple reasons. Nothing major. Movie stuff we'll cover in the review, but so going into this, I didn't have too much nostalgia pulling me, either for or away from this movie. So I felt like I was able to go into it pretty, pretty centered as far as that was regards. How was what is your feelings like?
It wasn't one I particularly watched growing up a lot, but I really appreciate it later in life when I started actually looking into movies and more specifically getting into animation. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool from that aspect. But yeah, it's a classic and I knew about it. I liked it, but really looking and studying into it, it was found more interesting than actually watching it.
Absolutely. So it was interesting to see this one as, we both, for the most part, had, positive opinions from the first two, live action Disney remakes that they've done, at least of the direct ones. And this one, I definitely say for the most part that I really liked it. I think if anyone was going to put, a complaint against this one in comparison to the other ones, it's probably that of the 3 they've done so far, they've probably changed the least in this one. And that's not necessarily a bad thing with the first, glaring thing I noticed. So it left me with that sort of same relationship where, if I had problems with this movie for the most part, there were problems I had with the original movie regardless. So there wasn't much, for me personally, there wasn't much because of the fact that it was changed or stuff like those kind of things that bugged me about this movie.
Most of the stuff they added was stuff I wanted. For the most part. Right. Most of the part, they added stuff in the right places. They gave a lot more depth and they explained more. And, there were small, mostly minor nitpicks that I, had with they either explained away or kind of shoved over and showed whatever. Mm-hmm. For me, though, it was a bit too samey for me, though.
I get that, for sure. Especially because, it's... You can see closer the justification for either the remakes they've done so far or the ones that they're going to do, as far as what the angle that they're going for. Cinderella, really old stuff that can easily be updated, room for new directions or expansion because the earlier movies are much more character simple wise, that kind of thing. Jungle Book, not only, experimenting with crazy technology and stuff like that, but also the story is simple enough that they could take the story for the most part in an incredibly new direction, but still feel loyal to the source material as a whole. When it came to Beauty and the Beast, I'm like, it's a film that most people don't have many major complaints about. We've already seen Disney do big, giant period castles and beautiful dresses and all that kind of stuff already. So there's not as much for me to grab onto as far as, like, this is the pitch of, like, you know, why they're doing this thing. Like, even with, you know, the idea of them doing, like, the Mulan reboot or something like that, I can see the justification for, you know, you could take the tone in a new direction to, you know, focus on the war stuff in a way that wasn't focused on before. Like, I can see directions you choose to go with those. Beauty and the Beast, for better or for worse, I feel like we have, you know, it's a almost shot-by-shot reinterpretation of the original movie. And if you go into it, once you realize that that's what they're going to do, you know, it helped me a lot as far as how I kind of looked at this movie, how I evaluated it, that kind of thing. I kind of look at this movie the same way I look at something like Nightmare Before Christmas, where I feel I enjoy it much more as, like, this, like, high-octane audiovisual experience than I do as a narrative forward-through film. Not to say that there's, you know, not good things narratively that this film does, but from the extent that, you know, it's a film that, in general, I enjoy a lot more just, you know, watching as a whole than, you know, I understand, especially from some people that really do not like this movie, that it's definitely a film you can nitpick the hell out of if you really want to.
Oh, yeah, there's minor things, but none of that was really huge. Yeah, I don't know. It was just like, I don't know. Most of the stuff they added was stuff I was totally behind.
Yeah, let's break it down that way. We'll do the stuff
yes.
they added to the movie entirely, and then we'll go through and do compare and contrast of the differences. So if we go through the stuff that was, you know, like, added from the get-go, the first thing you notice off the bat is the fact that rather than doing the storybook opening at the beginning, they actually did a literal scene of the Enchantress and the, you know, and the rose and that whole thing, which, you know, even for a glancing moment, did give you a sense, a little bit more of a better sense of what the Beast's eventual personality was going to be outside of just brutish, which I think actually worked well for this for the most part, where Beast's personality wasn't just ferocious, he's also, like, kind of pretentious and stuck up. And how that, you know, that makes a better... I think that actually made a good comparison to Belle, because both of them are people that, you know, have an appreciation for information and for art and that kind of thing, but they're both taken in different directions, where Belle is wide-eyed about it, and Beast is kind of, you know, he just kind of takes it for granted, and he's, you know, a lot more pretentious about it.
And also gives them a lot more parallels to the antagonist, too.
Exactly, which is I'm excited to get to Gaston later, because there's some fun stuff there. So I'm trying to think other major changes, things that they added. So the scene of the act of Maurice's original, you know, approach to the castle was far expanded in this version, where you especially the way that they framed it around there being, like, it felt like there was more than just the Beast to be the reveal. You know, that he got a chance to, like, actually go through the castle on himself, and it made for a better introduction of the, you know, of some of the moving, the moving servants inside of the house and whatnot. And it also helped give Maurice a better personality in this one, that he had, more to work with, more, his scenes were better handled. He had more scenes, including the next scene they added, which was actually having Gaston, have him escorted into the woods and all that, and chasing after, trying to chase after whatever the castle went, which, solved a lot of the questions, with Maurice as far as, like, trying to track Belle down, or how the castle itself works, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of little pieces like that they aren't really significant, but just makes it just flow better in the story. Like a lot of the little nitpick, they really went through and, like, oh, these are the small little nitpicks of the story, and they went and made an effort to fix them and do it. There were other minor nitpicks they created along the way, but nothing's ever perfect. But
no, nothing ever is.
you can really tell that they really, really cared about this movie.
Absolutely.
It's just like, especially like just getting to the thing where he just goes down the thing and takes that path, and it's anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff leading up to that kind of hints more towards the idea where the story's implied that this is all like some like supernatural setup and like everything in this movie is happening for a reason and so on and so forth.
Yes, and the curse feels a lot more like an actual curse in this one. It feels a lot more dramatic.
And it feels more connected to his direct problem, which was not being able to care about people.
Yes, and which is really why the opening really, really worked really well. And it's just like, it makes all the others, even all the little stuff, it makes sense. And you feel really a lot more tension in like the rose and all that, which was just always just kind of
like this obscure ticking clock in the original. Like there wasn't.
And this one, you see it go down and you're like, shit. And it's like, it's better story plot.
Absolutely. The next thing I think they added was they added some redirection in how the scene of her being captured was handled, as far as they also added a little bit more context to Belle's first escape from the castle. They didn't change what happened really. They just made it more direct in how they, in how that was handled. There's only two other major story points I think they added to the thing, which the first one was they added this extra side plot with Belle's mother with this magical book that took them places, which was one of the very few new things that I didn't think really worked that well. Like it kind of. Like, I understand what they were going for. There was some like connection between the Rose and Belle from that angle, but I don't know necessarily what it added for the screen time it added.
I don't know. It kind of, I don't know. For me, it added just a little bit more depth, and especially added a lot more of the Beast actually finding out more about Belle.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of people's complaints with the first one, which is kind of an actual legitimate, one of the few legitimate things.
Yeah.
In the first one, it feels really streamlined and feel close, and this time, it's just them having just really more screen time together and getting to know them more. And I don't know, it didn't take away from anything. It just felt slightly odd.
Yeah.
It didn't feel bad or didn't take me away from anything, but it just felt way. And then it's like, oh, and the plague, and they're talking about that. And I don't know.
You're right. I think the only other thing they added is there's a couple new songs. Which I think there was, Beast got a song at the very end that they didn't have in the original. Right when Belle leaves to save her father. And then there were some smaller ones that were kind of spread throughout. But that was the main one they added, was actually giving, and I think that one helped because it gave more of a tension to whether or not Belle was going to come back when her father left.
Yeah, that was the one that was really, really stood out. His Beast song.
Because it feels like it was always there, but I remember like, no, this wasn't actually in the original.
Yeah, there was one other song, and anyway, but yeah, there was a couple. None of them felt really great, but there was one other that I want to mention that I looked up the name of it too.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, it was none of them were bad. None of them took away from anything. Just there's a few that just it was nice that we got new stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a couple other new things there here and there. Like there's a couple more of the a couple more of the enchanted furniture things that got they got a couple more lines in it. Like there's a fun subplot with the oh shoot, what's the name of the instrument? It's not
harpsichord?
a piano.
Harpsichord.
It's a harpsichord, and they made a really funny joke about that because they asked him to be quieter, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, everyone's a critic," which is funny because a harpsichord can only play one volume. Which, yeah, like no kid is going to get that joke, but I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
Which
now I know.
Overall changes, yeah, that'd be probably the biggest one I'd say is that like there was a lot more humor in general in this version. I felt like either that or I just laughed at it as a whole more than I thought I would.
Yeah, there were a couple of jokes that felt a little out of place, but most of the time it was on point. Like no one's ever gonna be perfect, but yeah, I definitely think. But the biggest changes is all the small. They just added more depth to every character. Just got more depth.
Right. Let's move on to changes from the original then, because there's some fun stuff to break down there. So from the get-go, it appears they set the thing up very much like direct, straight up homage to the original, but you start seeing the subtle changes in how characters are portrayed. And the two characters for me I felt like they made the most positive changes to that made me understand and make them work better as characters were the characters of Gaston and LeFou for different reasons. The thing with Gaston's character like that they changed a lot of is they, on one hand, I felt they established more of exactly what Gaston's angle on everything was, and he felt more like a villain by the end of the movie. In the first movie, outside of misunderstandings, at worst, Gaston was, he's kind of a misunderstanding, he's an asshole that doesn't know what's going on. But it's like, sure, we all know that the Beast is evil and all this kind of stuff, but, realistically, he doesn't know. And everything he did outside of that was, completely dickish, but not Disney villain evil. In this movie, there's a level of events that he goes to throughout the movie where you can see him slowly taking more and more evil actions. At the beginning, he's even nice in the way that he approaches trying to court Belle, and it starts out as like you just don't like him because he's a douchebag and doesn't take no for an answer. But then he gets more aggressive. And then even after that, you can see after the Gaston song, his only motivation to go out and try to save Belle from the with Maurice is because he's trying to convince Maurice to give Belle his hand without her consent anyway. At that point, he freaks out, he punches Maurice, and his only way out of it is just to feed Maurice to the wolves, and then leave Belle stranded and forced to marry him. At which point, when that fails, he forces LeFou to lie on his behalf so that Maurice will be claimed insane, which that made that storyline make way more sense. I loved the fact that it wasn't just, he saw a beast in the woods. It's like, no, Gaston is planning this thing. And I like the fact that Gaston is not stupid. And the reason that does work is because it makes you ask the question of if it's not that Gaston is stupid, then Belle has to have some other reason of not liking him. Because that solves a major problem with Belle's character, for the most part. So it's he's smart, but he also has no respect for higher learning or anything like that. He's just conniving. Which makes a nice parallel between him and the Beast, a good kind of smart and a bad kind of smart. But on top of that, it makes it so that by the time you get to, his riot song at the very end, and he's talking about why they're going after the Beast, the reason you realize how evil this guy is he's literally going out to kill the Beast out of spite. He's just that vindictive that he's willing to turn the entire town into an angry mob to go after the Beast, to the point where not only does he shoot the Beast completely unarmed when the Beast has no intention of fighting back against him, the Beast almost kills him, lets him get away, and he uses his final breaths to just fire as many, old-timey bullets into the thing as possible until, his malice eventually leads to his demise. And what I liked about that is it wasn't just you know, there's been fun articles people have made recently about, like, you know, like, when do we have any, like, truly, like, just pure evil Disney villains anymore? And I kind of get that argument, but, like, the thing with Gaston that I liked is that, like, it was, like, the best of both, where he's a normal, complicated, you know, character who over time becomes the, you know, the cartoonishly evil Disney villains that we love.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, his arc growth is just so on point. He's just as charismatic as he is in the thing, and just as fun as he is. He lost nothing of that, which is really perfect.
Yeah, like, you can love and hate the guy, like, which is the whole point of that kind of character.
Yeah, and he definitely has way more human. Yeah, everything you said. The one complaint, and I know many people have talked about with this movie. A lot of people have argued me on this opinion, so you'll probably disagree. But
Sure.
I think at the very end, I don't know. It felt like he went a step too far. I didn't like that he just became the completely evil. It felt like, I don't know. I think it would have felt better if he didn't die at the end,
right,
and just kind of, it's like, this is done, and finally leaves or something. But
yeah. I mean, I like the way that they framed it in the sense that, like, he made his bed, now he has to lie in it. Like that he had an opportunity to not be evil and then took it.
Yeah.
But I can understand also, like, it would have, you know, I can understand the argument for, like, you know, him leaving with a little bit more, like, contemplation and just, you know, walking away into the woods.
Especially since he was such more of a human character. Like,
yeah.
And that they actually gave him that moment. I'm not saying that the moment they did was bad or it didn't work.
Yeah.
I think it would have worked a little better in this movie if they would have done that. He would have took it on for it. But anyway, it isn't bad on any part. It doesn't not work, and it still but it's like, and then he just dies the Disney death.
He dies the Disney death, but I felt the framing, the way that they, you know, approached it was
yes,
better than most, where it's just a thing. And it's by far not even, like, the darkest of these kind of Disney deaths. Something like, people forget about Kerchak and Tarzan, but holy shit, like,
it was darker in the animated version, truthfully. A little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it still works and it's still good, and Gaston's still just one of the best parts of the movie.
The other one, like I said, is, like, it's even hard to even compare that, like, LeFou got an increase in character in this movie, because in the original, he had no character in the original movie.
Yeah,
like, he was the definition of a one-note character in the first movie, and in this one, they literally took, like, you know, almost the joke of the kind of character he was, and they made that actually, like, a positive, you know, aspect of the character, where he's just kind of like this guy that people joke around. It's like, oh, it's funny because he spends too much time around Gaston, and it feels like it should be, like, uncomfortable because he might be gay. And then in this one, it's just like they play that up rather than completely ignore it. And for the most part, it leads to his character becoming, even using stereotypes, it makes the character more interesting rather than less interesting. For the most part, there's a couple points where, like, the thing that bothered me that I wish they would have done with this is there's a line, if they wouldn't have, like, taken it back later, there's a line in the Gaston song where it sounds like it's implying that Gaston already knows he's gay. And when he's, like, you know, too much, maybe a little bit, and if they wouldn't have addressed, if they wouldn't have had the line later when he asks him directly, like, why, you know, like, a strapping young man like him doesn't have a girl, like, without that line, I think that would have been really cool, because it would have given, you know, that actually been a really weird, you know, level of humanity to Gaston's character if he, you know, if at least he shows, like, some self-awareness where he's just like, okay, a bit much, and then, you know, or whatever, where, like, it fits within his character being, like, the hype man of Gaston, because it makes him, like, overprotective about the different kind of girls that go all over him, or, you know, Maurice doesn't really, like, understand why he's into Belle or whatever. But also, like, it made this cool point where even if Gaston wasn't going to be the villain that had, like, some level of humanity LeFou kind of filled that role because he had hesitations and like he was the guy that realized like they had to sit back when Gaston went overboard and was like, I think we may have gone a little bit too far here, and he did that a couple times, and I understand. But at the same point, I understand. I don't think less of him because he caved in those kind of moments because he's not the biggest or like shown as like the most courageous kind of character, and although you can tell he's got his heart in the right place, it's not like Gaston doesn't really put the pressure on him when he asks him to lie about Maurice. Like, it's not, a decision that's easy for him to make. And it helps that, because of that, you can have a villain that doesn't, obviously get quite as screwed at the end of the movie as everybody else, and he kind of gets his aspects of redemption. Like, yeah, it's hard to complain that a character gets more character than the original when the original, was just there. Like,
yeah,
it's just expansion.
The impact really, really sets in when the character throughout the whole movie was like, yes, I'm totally behind you, I'm going down 100. He has a whole song about how great he is, and then when he starts going about it, he's like, maybe this is it. It's just, he becomes afraid of him. The character who's...
Yeah, and that's what makes the character of Gaston work. I mean, his interactions make the character of Gaston work. In the original story and in this one, the point of the character of Gaston is realizing the irony that in any other story, Gaston would be the hero, and that Gaston thinks he's the hero. In any other story, it'd be the story of the damsel in distress who can't take care of herself, who's kidnapped by the evil, monstrous beast, and it's up to the strapping young man to, leap into battle and save the princess. And that's the whole point of this story, is that he's not. And in this story, having him by his side, helps address those specific issues better, where it's the fantasy equivalent of what at one point to a person was like, thinks is a grand romantic gesture, and the other person next to him being able to say, actually, that's kind of creepy. Like, and that's how Gaston's character comes off a lot of the time. But at the same point, there are fleeting moments at the beginning when he, like at least approaches the whole situation politely, but it's the fact that immediately after that, when he's dismissed, that he immediately just jumps down into, the bottom of the barrel and, like... Mm-hmm. Basically treats Belle like she's a baby creating machine and, and all that kind of crap. Like, it's, they do a really good job of walking that likable and unlikable line. And I think a lot of that is the way that, we see Gaston's character through Maurice's eyes. We like Gaston when Maurice likes Gaston, and we slowly start to back away from Gaston when Maurice, backs away from just completely agreeing with everything he says. I feel like Maurice's character actually got a lot more stuff to do as well. Like, rather than just being this, like, kooky, crazy inventor guy, like, he had that, but he also felt smart because of that. But on top of that, him and Belle had a much, like, warmer, father-daughter
They just
experience.
Had more time together, and that's really all they needed. It's just...
Yeah, and because of the fact that, Maurice's scene in the castle was expanded, it felt like him being there in the first place didn't feel like just a plot device within the movie. And him having more screen time also let us cut back and forth, to what's going on in the town and all that kind of stuff more often as well. So that, so those expansions, they worked fine.
I would say the other biggest one that I think is definitely the biggest is really just the Beast, actually.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like the way they reframed his personality was for the better.
Absolutely, and they just gave him not like they don't, well, in one point they do, but they gave him more of a huge backstory. They have a whole sequence of it, which, I don't know, the whole... Actually going back, but
yeah,
I wish they would have kept it a little more implied at that point. Yeah. Because when they're just like when he's first like he's hurt and bad, and they're just kind of talking undertones, and like they just kind of imply his father and all that. It works really well, and it's really cool, and you understand it. He basically was Gaston.
Yeah. And that's the whole point, is that Gaston's the one that's not willing to change, and Beast is the one that is.
Yes, and that was always the original intent of the original story and all that, and given all that and things. And this one, it just works so much better. It's just good. And they just have more time together, and there's a lot of parts where, like, a lot of people's complaints about the first movie is that he felt like he wasn't actually falling in love. He was just giving her things and doing that.
Of which they did a lot of points to fix that.
Yes.
So the first of which we talked about the fact that his personality was changed a lot, where instead of just having a major anger problem, it was more about him being pretentious and stuck up. Because of that, he was originally, like in the original version where he just like completely knows that, you know, like, oh, well, can't Belle be the one to break the curse? He almost doesn't want to, because he thinks that Belle is, the daughter of a thief and that she's a bad person or whatever. And that immediately establishes this idea that he's not willing to just fall in love with Belle for the sake of falling in love with her, which is an important distinction. But after that, you know, the scene in the library shows both of them getting out of their comfort zones, and that was the main structure of the good things they did with this, when she looks at like all of the books and she's thrown in majesty, and he says, have you read every single one of these? Oh, I mean, not all of them. Some of them are written in Greek. And he's like, was that a joke you just made? Nope, moving on. Like, you know, or like the scene later in the movie where he chastises her for liking Romeo and Juliet because she's, you know, despite her being formerly, and that's the thing that I actually, one of the few moments I really like the expansion of her character in comparison to the original, is that the way they're framing it supposed to be is that despite the fact that she's more like educated and real, you know, thorough thought about the world, deep down inside she still does believe in like the Disney fairy tale-y kind of, you know, happily ever after, you know, true love, whatever. And the fact that, you know, like, Beast kind of calls her out on that, but then later in the movie, he's reading a story about Guinevere and King Arthur. It's like, oh, no, I'm just reading it for the swords and the knights and all that. It's a story about forbidden love. This conversation is over. Like, you know, that's where their chemistry came from, is that they were challenging each other, and both of them were changing, you know, because of that throughout the movie. They were honest with each other throughout the movie. She never hesitated to stand up to him, and but at the same point you can see, I don't remember in the original if she knew, I don't think, in the original did she know about the flower, like as far as like how it worked? Because in this version I know particularly they choose not to tell her, because they know that if they tell her then she won't actually fall in love with him. Anyway, but I like the fact that in this one they specifically address the fact that Belle knows about the flower but does not know how to stop it.
Anyway.
So that, you know,
there's yes. Yes, that was a really cool moment when they specifically, like...
Yeah, don't worry about it. Like, you know, because it creates a moral conundrum of, like, if she's truly in love with him or if she's constantly questioning if it's, you know, for whatever reasons or so on and so forth. You know, so the reframing of a lot of those things with the Beast made him a more compelling character, because he, you know, had to, you know, drop a lot of those mental walls and, you know, and get to that point. And you see him, you know, becoming more like optimistic throughout the film, or like, you know, or different aspects about different things, and and like slowly like learning to care more about what she thinks and that kind of thing. And
it affects everyone else in the castle, because everyone in the castle is a little bit more desperate. That, like, this is gonna break. And he's, I don't know, he doesn't, like, he cares, but at the end, not really. He's more depressed about the thing, and he's just like...
Yeah, he's always thought it was hopeless, so, like, even just this fleeting moment of hope.
And everyone else had so much hope and so much heart, and, like, when she comes, and it makes, like... Just be our guest. It puts that whole song into more context.
Because the song is like, just, please don't leave. Like, please just stay here, please.
It's just like, it's just that little, it's all those little things that add up that make this movie really, really interesting.
Right. So, Belle's character, subtle changes for the most part. I'm still not, in general, the big, like... like I said, it doesn't help with this one in particular that I have never been the biggest fan of Belle's character specifically on concept. But I felt like this version made it did fix a couple of the problems I have with Belle's character. I've never been able to pin down before why I necessarily don't like her character. I've had someone bring it up recently where I kind of found what I was trying to think of, which is the idea that in the wrong hands, it can be interpreted that Belle comes off as pretentious. In general, her opening song is about how she's better than everybody else. Mulan is singing about not fitting in within her culture. Simba is singing about wanting to rule, and and all these, Hercules is singing about how he doesn't belong in the world, and Mulan, and then just Belle is singing about I'm stuck with all of these simple people.
Yeah, it's like.
I wish that, I don't know how you do it, to an extent, she does become more human, but I wish that aspect of her character was more firmly addressed, because it can also, unfortunately, come off sometimes she just falls for, she finally found the one highly educated guy that she could fall in love with, because,
Yeah,
but at the same point, the fact that Gaston is not a simpleton helps that point, too, because it's not because he's not smart that you don't like Gaston. It's because he's a bad person.
It doesn't make it a little more clear that she doesn't think everyone's an idiot. Just everyone's more set in their ways and just more small towny. And
they show that a little bit with the scene where she shows the book to the girl and all that. That it's more about the fact that people don't want change. People don't want to grow. People don't want to and that kind of thing.
Instead of. This is definitely a town. Instead of having, a big, giant library that apparently no one visits, they have, in a chapel, a couple books on a shelf that...
so she's read each one of them, twice.
Probably, yeah. And, I don't know, it still doesn't... It just adds a little better to her character. It doesn't completely change it, but it gives it a little more context to make it...
part of it is, I think originally her character was intended to be more of a cipher, but at the same point, it didn't quite work as an insert character as much as, as they originally intended. And like I said, it's not specifically this movie's fault. It's a problem I've had with the original from the get-go. But most of the changes they made for that, were for the better.
Yeah, that's one of the changes that just is in the story that you can't really change.
There's not really many ways around it. They made her more independent. They gave her a lot more agency in the story in general. They show, actually being able to, see more of her escape attempt, or, the ways that she stood up to the beast, or, I liked seeing, when she, is going against the wolves, she doesn't, just panic. She literally just, picks up the first stick she can find and tries to fight them off, Or the one, really human scene in it is when, when the beast saves her from the wolves and he's, beaten up on the ground and the horse shows up and she hesitates for half a second, on whether or not she's going to leave him to die. And, sure, she's not going to leave him to die, but the fact that it makes her feel more human that you can tell she at least thought about it. And that was a big moment for me. So changes as far as the enchanted servants in the movie. Most of them didn't have too many major changes. Lumiere and Cogsworth mostly stayed to their same approximate character roles, throughout the movie. And they didn't have much of a, they had some fun, and I think that they did a better job with, Lumiere and the Feather Duster, and, they made the idea of their flirtation more tragic, and you feel, because in general, that was one of the major things, that you feel more for the ticking clock for all of them, because rather than just being this funny joke of he's, the furniture's in love with each other, it's no, we're we don't know if we're ever going to be human again,
Yes, the curse seems such more weight, and it feels like that, and it's not just them, we're just gonna be stuck as thing. You see them as the petal falls, they talk about how they're slightly more metal and they're slightly more king, and they're
and at the same
slowly losing their humanity as it goes on.
And they're the main pitching point for Belle being able to open up about the beast in the first place, because I thought he says, you'll be stuck in here forever, and once this door closes, he says that shit all the time. So they're more welcomeness. It's not just because the first one is mostly Potts doing that because she was like the dead mother character, but in this one it's more across everybody that they're willing to, they're kind of defending him a little bit, but at the same point when when they see that she's going to leave, they don't stop her. They're disappointed, but they're very respectful of the fact that she's captured and she doesn't want to be there. So a lot of those characters changed, worked definitely for the best. Even the way they changed certain other scenes where, like, I thought that surprisingly the actual iconic Beauty and the Beast sequence, the fact that they purposely made it less epic actually helped it quite a bit. Because rather than the first one, where most of the focus is on just panning across the giant room and looking at the cool CGI and all this kind of thing, like, it was very much more focused, like, just on them in this small, intimate moment, rather than look at all of the pretty things. Which, for a movie that spends a lot of time saying look at all the pretty things, it was nice to, have a more isolated moment.
I think that's a medium change, especially just from animation to live action, because they didn't have a huge amount of really show-off scenes in the original one. And that's the one that is really there. And that's why it sticks in the mind. That's why it's the scene when you think about Beauty and the Beast. And it's really good scene. But this one has a ton of scenes where it's just showing you the grand scale of the castle and, like, the beauty of the old French style thing and the decaying thing. And, yeah, it works, but, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of scenes like that, which is, I don't know, it felt really weird that that's the scene that they really did, like, a lot different, not hugely different. A lot different,
but like, I thought that tone difference worked. And then the same thing, too, they kind of did with Cinderella as well, where they actually were, like, showing, like, different styles of dances and that kind of thing that, helped it quite a bit. And also how surprisingly respectful her Beast's confession to Belle was, where she basically tells him, like, I could be in love with you, but, like, I can't necessarily forget that I'm technically still trapped here.
Oh, yes, that was, like...
The dialogue in that scene was fantastic, where Beast, like, was so scared to say anything, and yet her response was just so respectful, but also, like, it's almost to the extent where, like, even the Beast... to the extent where it almost feels like even the Beast forgot that she was technically trapped there. But she didn't, technically, like, just... to say that, like, yeah, I love it here, but, but I technically still can't leave. And even that leading to how he hesitates so much less when everything comes up, where, like, in the original, he barely, you can tell he makes the decision to let him go, because he's looking over at the rose and he's freaking out, or, like, in this one, it's all about her. He doesn't really take a second glance, and you can tell that in the song afterwards, is because he, in his version, more trusts her to come back. And how that, all portrays. And, those aspects I really enjoyed quite a bit. The only problem I had with the way that ended up working out, which is not even really a problem, it's just a context that bothered me a little bit, is, like, he sings this big song, like, I'm sure she'll come back, I'm sure she'll come back. But because of the circumstances that come up ahead of time, we never actually get to find out for certain whether or not she would have come back. Because she comes back under duress. Like, she comes back to, like, she came back to make sure he didn't die. But I wish we would have seen if she would have come back, just, under normal like, in another circumstance other than either go back or he dies. Like, I don't know. It was, but it also, I see where that frames the doubt from the Beast and feeling like, specifically that he loves her, then he doesn't love him. And, how, like, that leads to his confrontation with Gaston being so much more somber when he's, like, feels like he's already practically stuck in this form forever and he's got nothing more to live for, and Gaston just doesn't give a crap and just shoots him anyway. And, his excitement when Belle comes back to try to save him, and what feels like a really, heroic scene in that sense, and, like, where you get a better sense of, like, the charging of the castle and that kind of thing. So all that put together makes a lot of stuff with the finale, like, believing, the final Confession of Love, or the other stuff with, with trying, Beast, being able to hold back his anger and not kill Gaston, and, all that kind of stuff, felt a lot more solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Any other major notes you had about the movie?
Okay, so we talked about a lot of the changes that
Yes.
they did, and they changed a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that they kept the same that really annoyed me, because they kept it so samey.
There was, and keep on, we're saying the same, we're talking, almost shot for shot the same, unfortunately, a lot of this.
Yes,
it's...
it's past, homage and just, has references to the thing where they're wearing the exact same clothes, and they're wearing, the thing, and it's not
or they're,
just...
matching lines or choreography, or, just...
It's the same thing, just, I don't know, they didn't add... There's a lot of places that they didn't add that they really should have.
For sure. It's...
Yeah, especially with, a lot of the songs, if they didn't have different context, felt just the exact same thing.
It created a lot of scenes in this movie that happened because they happened in the original, rather than because they happened, motivated by certain things in a lot of points. And that, it's weird when you got a film like this where, we've had this problem before where sometimes, and not with Disney films specifically, but in a lot of films that do these kind of reboots or these kind of things where, sometimes where being too loyal to the original can come back and backfire on you. That is a problem that Hollywood has had time and time again. And for the most part, I feel like that is the Achilles heel of this movie, is that it, for a movie that does take as many, really solid, chances and, takes a lot of really good risks, it is also a very, very, very safe movie outside of those isolated circumstances.
Yeah, and it's those parts where they really change things up that make it stick out so much.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just, it took me out of the movie on a couple of parts where it's just I studied the animation of Beauty and the Beast, and I really looked at it. So maybe it was me pointing out thing, but the way the wolves attacked him, bite him the same, and even just they grabbed him the same, and and there's just so many of those small things that it took me out of the movie.
No, I hear you.
It reminded me I was watching a movie.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this isn't an argument on whether or not we should do reboots or remakes. This is specifically the way it's handled in this one. Because, the movie is 26 years old. That's old. In my opinion, that's old enough to make a remake or a reboot if you want to.
I don't know. There's a bit more of an argument in this movie compared to a lot of the other ones. I would still say it does enough to...
Yeah, I'd say primarily only because this one probably needs less updating than some of the other ones have. At least the ones we've seen so far.
Yeah.
But as far as, pure age of the movie, I wouldn't say 26 years is too soon.
No.
I think, if anything, I wish they would have taken a much more drastic departure because of the fact that it would stop a lot of the immediate comparisons to the original, because of the fact that, the original, for a lot of people, makes this film come off as a lot more of a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. But this movie does fix the few things that are broken, with the original. Well, like you said, accidentally opening up some new ones. Sorry I had to Pumbaa that point away from you, but... Timon that point away from you.
Really... Sorry, I'm just disappointed you didn't say if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If it ain't broke,
Come on, that's a line.
I know, that is... I'm sorry that I did not make that pun.
I'm really disappointed in you.
But,
anyway.
You know what really did help the making of this movie, though? They had a whole lot of money. Whole lot of money. So, any other... So, got a lot of the goods, the bads, and all that kind of stuff about this movie. Any final points you really have about, Beauty and the Beast as a whole, or your thoughts about the movie?
In most aspects, this is how you do a remake.
Yes.
Most of them. Yeah, you're never going to get perfect. It's not the best movie, but it took what people had an issues with and just changed them. And that's the part that really astounds me, where it's like stuff like the library is so much smaller in a small little chapel, and people complaining about that, and just like it took the minorest nitpicks and just even if it gave a line or gave something to address it, so you can really, really tell that they cared. That's what really makes this movie. It just really updated it, and it just made it. It's still the same in spirit. It's still the same in tone. Most parts, it's still the same feel. It feels like a Disney fairy tale, just
Absolutely.
bigger and grander. And the visuals, we didn't talk about the visuals, but the visuals are great and spectacular. And Disney being Disney and throwing their full weight of Disney money around. You can absolutely tell, and it looks great.
Right.
And it's definitely that. But they did a really good job for the most part of keeping the original feel. And it feels like a fairy tale in a good way, because we don't get a lot of pure fairy tales anymore.
Right.
And this one is just a pure fairy tale, and it works. And they just update it. They just pull these parts that didn't work, do this, shuffle it around a little bit, add a bit more. It's just Beauty and the Beast plus.
Yeah, that's about where my opinion is.
Action.
I feel like it is. Like, as a person who isn't in love with the original Beauty and the Beast, I like a lot of the positive changes they made with this version, and I think it makes a nice complement to the original. Not necessarily, in all these circumstances, does it feel like it has to be a direct competition between movies or that kind of thing. I feel like they're different enough that there's stuff that you can appreciate about the way that either one is done, and there's fun stuff to go through and to find, that you like about one version over the other, or that kind of thing. And gave light to a lot of characters that didn't really have that much exposure before. They expanded on why certain characters work and that kind of thing. And in particular, like I said in the original, with the additions made on the villains were probably one of the bigger points for me, where I feel like were, some of the most glaring, reasons it was worth going to the trouble of, redoing this movie and, taking some new angles at it. Because I feel like that was one of the, those characters and some of the other minor characters were some of the biggest things where I can see, where the pitch for making this outside of, oodles and oodles of cash came from. From a person writing this thing saying, well, if we're going to do Beauty and the Beast, what can I change? What can I add to? I feel like they picked the right directions for that.
Because, it's big enough that they could have just done Beauty and the Beast and just do a live action absolutely remake from scene. Yes. And just do that. And it still would have sold. It still would have made all the money, because it is one of the biggest.
Yeah, it's this is the...
It's a big, huge Disney classic for a reason.
Yeah.
And they could have done it. But that's the part I really appreciate, is definitely the small nitpicks, is where you can really see that they just cared about this movie. And it shows.
Yes. A great story, a great remake, and, with any luck, this remake will, have an impact on a lot of other kids that grew up on it, like a lot of kids grew up in the original, and become their tale as old as time.
I was actually trying to find a way to put that in, but I couldn't find a way to make it not really incredibly corny.
Well, I mean, it is a Disney movie, so...
So you just bit the bullet and just went with the corny. I appreciate it.
I have if you read a lot of stuff that I make, I don't have a hesitation in just biting in and going in for the corny, but... Anyways, we hope you guys enjoyed our review discussion thing for Beauty and the Beast 2017. Keep logged into us at soundcloud.com/deadmaninc if you want to see more of our Disney stuff, both old and new. We'll be back, obviously, with some new stuff when some more awesome new Disney movies come our way. Also, you can check out our other weekly podcast, Dead Men Tell All Tales, where we talk about fun nerd news and fun other nerd topics and things. And you can check out some other stuff at YouTube or Facebook, that kind of stuff at /DeadmanInc. So until next time, I'm Ken. This is Travis. Bombvoyage.